Hello, welcome everybody. It is March 1st. Unbelievable. We hope your first 2 months of 2021 has been good and productive. And we are here today in our HR Huddle. We thought we would talk about some career pathway ideas. Jen and I were talking about, just different things that firms are looking at and probably need to pay attention to so that we can identify places for people to progress and how they can progress. And there's more than this upward ladder movement, I think, that we've done traditionally in firms. We have a hierarchy and we've been moving up momentum, I guess, in our careers. And that's how we've been coaching our staff, to progress, and that's what's possible. And there's sideways lattice movement. There's also all kinds of things that are showing up, I think, in the way we're working with our remote and flex options. That, what does that look like inside of our career pathways, and just a whole bunch of different factors like that. So we just thought we would explore some of those today. And Jen, I don't know if there was a place you wanted to add to that before we jumped in, or a place to start, that you see.
Well, I just think that most future leaders or young people tell us, and this isn't just a next generation idea or a young person idea, but we hear it a lot from those folks. I wish I had better clarity of what my choices were. I wish I better understood the path upward, the ladder I'm on. What does it take to get to the next rung? So there's a lack of clarity on this upward ladder climb that Tamera referred to, the traditional climb. But then there's also are there any options to the lateral? Are there any other ladders I could jump to and climb those instead? Because maybe I'm not totally in love with the ladder I'm on. Or what if I want to rest at this rung of the ladder?
Right.
What if I don't want to climb? We hear that sometimes. I mean, I'll never forget a young woman that I was coaching. She had come back from maternity leave, and she said, "I'm pulling back on my performance." Because, and I was like, "What? Who pulls back on their performance?" And she said, "I'm afraid they're going to promote me. I can't make that next level climb right now. My life is strange, and I'm trying to get a hold of my personal life, and I just don't want the additional responsibility." And I was like, "Hey, how about tell them you could still be awesome at the level you're at?
Right.
Why don't you tell them that you're feeling outmanned, or that you need more support or something? So need a resting place." So that's another option people say. And then Tamera, I think that fourth thing is so what's the path up? Are there options laterally that I could get on another ladder? Can I rest? And what are the implications of that? And then lastly, this thing that drives me crazy. I mean, I grit my teeth when I hear people say it. Well, your remote employees, we can probably manage remote employees, but they're not going to progress. I mean, they can't climb up. They can't be promoted. They won't, find themselves to partner in this organization. That's a career limiting move, and I hate that. So you pick where you want to go next, Tamera, with that out.
I like those 4 things, and I thought it was 7 more.
That I'm sure of.
I want to actually, you also made me think about elevating one thing that I think is like a must-have out of everything you were just outlining.
Yes.
Is transparency and communication about what's possible in your firm. Because that poor woman you were talking about didn't know she could even bring it. And I think we experience that. We find out when they leave us, when they give us their notice. And we want to have conversations in our, career coaching meetings, in our check-in meetings, in our performance reviews, and talking about what's next. We should be having these conversations and make it okay and safe to be able to say, "Hey, I would like to do something different."
Oh,
so I just think
that's the most important thing. Yeah, that's the most important thing. And I think, for a lot of us, I'm going to bring in the concept of generosity. I have to be generous enough to let you change my plans for you as an employee, or as I have plans for you as a person on the ladder. And I have to be cool about that my plans for you don't matter.
Right.
Not if you're not fulfilled and happy and satisfied and inspired and growing and learning and doing what you want to do, or winning at home for that restful person that needs a break, whatever it is. And I think sometimes leaders are just, they want to be selfish. We want to be just like, I'm going to just jam you up this ladder because that's what I need, because I need to have you be my successor, or I've already introduced you to a bunch of clients, or, like we think selfishly about what we'll lose when we give you the freedom to say how you feel about your role, and what you'd like to see more of and less of, and where you envision yourself going next. And I think that not only do we have to ask, but we have to check ourselves for selfishness and the inner dialogue that we're thinking while they're telling us what they're thinking. So we're not trying to sell them back into something that isn't really going to work.
Well, and I think it's fair to say I will be sad to lose you, and I want you to be fulfilled and happy, because that's valid. It's completely valid.
Yes.
But we have to be willing to say that. I think that's, just so important that we just create that kind of environment first. Otherwise, none of this is going to work. So how about we start with your fourth item and the remote.
Tamera.
I know.
That's an invitation.
We could spend the whole time on that, but we won't, because we have a few others to add as we're adding to our list. And if you are listening and want to add to the list, by the way, please do, or even after the fact, if you listen to this afterwards. But the whole remote idea, and I think it's also part-time to some degree as well, is I'm gonna lump those together.
100%.
I know they're a little bit different, but I think they're treated the same. So, if I'm a remote person, how can I be a manager? Or I have to be limited in manager, and I can't build relationships with clients, and I can't do business development, and there's a list. I can't, manage people. And we would argue that they can. We think we've proven it this past year, obviously. We believed that before that. And I think that we're starting to see clients start to want to work that way too. And our next gen clients, we've talked about this before, on our HR huddle. It's not just our talent, it's our clients as well. My accounting firm told me this year, we have some changes. You have to use the portal. We have to do video conference. You can't come in. And I was like, she was expecting pushback. I'm like, okay, good, about time. We're ready. I'm ready. I'm fine. And so, I think that's the way we have to go. And so we can figure out, how do we create these positions for people, the number of clients they can manage, the kinds of projects, what are they working on, and compensation. I mean, that's often what it comes down to. If I'm a partner, let's just say I progress to partner, I can't be a partner. It's really compensation that becomes it. Now, sometimes there's, firm administrative or management duties that we have to figure out also, but that should be part of our planning in your role. If it's 3/4 time, 3/4 of the responsibilities, then we just figure that out. So, and unfortunately, it's not that easy of math. I wish it was just 3/4, but we can figure it out. We could define it. So we don't see that as a obstacle. We see that something to work through. So.
For sure. And I think career pathways is all about, what do you desire to do, but also what are your gifts and talents? Where are your strengths? Where are, you sort of the innate abilities that you have? And if you're more relational and you enjoy more relational work, how could we deploy you more relationally? And if you're more technical, how could we give you more of that? And if you like a blend, how could we get you that blend? And also, where are the firm's needs? I'm not going to tell you that we just need to allow people to go wherever they want, do whatever they want, if we don't have that need. That doesn't work. But most firms have many needs. And so, hopefully we're able to meet these folks' needs along the way. But it's kind of a marriage between the two. And so I have to think about you and your talents and gifts. I have to think about what the firm needs, and I have to hear from you about what your interests, your motivations are, what your current priorities are, what you'd like to see more of and less of. I have to invite that conversation, and it's a blend of those things. And so you used a couple of examples. I mean, sometimes with remote work, people will say, well, if our business is principally in Ohio and she's moving to Colorado, how could she ever develop business? Well, as we move to more remote client service, we should be able to develop business remotely. If we're only going to serve people in person in Ohio, yes, a Colorado person is going to be inhibited. But if we take advantage of all the learning from the pandemic and all the progress before the pandemic, we could start doing more borderless reach for clients, less in-person client service. And somebody like that, that's remote to us geographically, could completely serve clients, manage engagements, and develop business. Especially if we don't care if the business is in Ohio. But if we start going to a remote business development model, which will save us a ton of time and be way more efficient, where most of our business development is done remotely, man, we don't care where they live. So you can have a really great relational person out there developing business, sourcing clients, selling them and serving them and managing people, and they don't live where your office is principally located, and that's okay. And we see it all the time. So don't count people out just because of that.
I think that's such a good point. I also think, as you're looking at, like, what do I like to do more of and less of, we can figure out how to, like, we have to let go of how our traditional roles have been defined.
Yes.
And I know we've talked about, other kinds of, non-traditional, hires and, pulling some of the work out to non-CPAs and, taking some of that work out of their hands. I also think that we could create positions that have not been invented yet that we need. And I have a firm, they had somebody that was, either just newly promoted to manager, about to be promoted to manager, and it just wasn't working for him. And he said he's kept gravitating towards training and being a technical resource. And he said, it's so needed here. And this isn't that large of a firm. And they were like, okay, let's carve that out. Let's have you be that resource. But they were trying to spread it out across a whole bunch of people. And he wanted more fixed hours. He knew it would, affect his compensation. He was fine with that. His wife had a big job also, and they were trying to balance it. And he's like, I can do this. And so he does a few client projects to stay in touch, but mostly like 97% of his time is being that technical training resource, and he's responsible for the learning programs, for the firm, but also technical research and, providing that. And that's just one example. I know we've got examples of some other firms where they've moved in, out of, maybe audit into an operations, role, or into learning and development roles, or, we see those things happening, and we just think there's such a need right now for firms. You hate to lose them if they're good. They're a known quantity. They fit your culture, which is a huge one. If I'm asking those questions, Jen, that you said, what do you want to do more of? Watch what they gravitate towards. I mean, that's another thing. And then give them the permission, because some of those people felt like, I need to give notice. I cannot continue on this path that I'm on, this railroad tracks that I'm on. So.
Yes. And I've had an audit partner who was relatively young say, I don't like audit. I got to get out of audit, and her whole firm, not a big firm, they get, big gasp. She was the heir apparent for the audit practice leader. It was not a happy revelation. I was so glad that she trusted her firm with the revelation, because she could easily have just packed up and got a job in industry, or, retired, early retirement to take a break and regroup and then go somewhere else. And she wanted to pursue tax, and that is a hard transition.
Wow.
To learn tax in your 40s. But man, she crushed it. They said, we'll support you in doing it. Let's build a transition plan that makes sense. And she's super successful. Many years into the transition now, it was exactly right for her. It was exactly right for the firm. But at the time, it felt like terrible news. And I was proud of how mature they were and caring, and committed to her above maybe some of their short-term suffering. And it all worked out. But I think if we don't give our people these opportunities to talk about those kinds of things, we're not going to recognize that they really aren't going to climb up that ladder. And we'll start to see deficiencies in motivation, potentially deficiencies in work product, the feelings of disengagement that start over time. And we don't want to see that in our people. We want them to feel engaged, and we want them, Tamera said it earlier, to feel safe, that they could say something so scary and that we would, sort of swallow and say, okay, let's figure it out.
Exactly. Well, and also I think, with the rise of advisory and consulting services, we see people gravitating towards that. And I think we have to give permission to be able to do that. And it might be a leap or it might be gradual. The concern about gradual is we don't really want to let go. We kind of hang on to that person.
We don't give them any time to work on the advisory. They can't seem to focus on it because of
No.
us.
No. And so then we say yes with our words, but then our actions don't demonstrate that. So I would watch for that, be careful of that. And not just in the advisory and consulting, I would say any of those roles that we, are doing. If it's a clean break, it's like pulling the Band-Aid off, right? It's almost easier. Then I would like to get more experience, in our food industry and, move towards that direction. And it's like, okay, well, when that comes up, we'll do that. And so that is an example of, providing those experiences for people. But, we have to figure that out and actually be intentional, tell people so that they know, tell the partners in charge of that industry that they know about it. Look at the scheduling, talk to the scheduler about it, figure it out. And that's, part of the communication too, I think is, to talk about this from an HR perspective, especially like as we're doing performance reviews and as we're, talking about our check-in meetings with our people, that we want to be listening for this. And, sometimes there might be resistance, like, I don't want to listen for that. Like if they have that, they can come to me. But we should probably, as from an HR perspective, be encouraging it so that we can uncover it before it's too late. Ask the questions, keep the open, transparency. And I think most of the time, that people want to continue on the path they're on. It's the few. It really is the few. It's just like, we're going to offer remote in our flex when we used to do that before the pandemic. We were so worried that, everybody would choose to work from home, and we didn't see that happen. I think the same is here too. So the fear is going to be, bigger than what the actual reality is. So.
And the question's simple. How do you feel about your path at our firm?
Mm-hmm.
If they go, fine, say more about that.
Mm-hmm.
If they go, well, okay, tell me, how are you feeling? What are you concerned about? What are you excited about? I mean, you can ask multiple questions and you'll get them to sort of cough it up. And sometimes they'll say something like, well, I've decided I want to be a fireman. And none of us wants to hear that. I don't have a firm yet in public accounting and consulting that has firemen as one of
the new one, though.
lattice jumps that people can make to a ladder over there as firemen. But, unless it's a part-time volunteer fireman, but most of these people, that are thinking about a real career change, they're really going to leave. And it's okay to say that too. And then you say, okay, so what do you need for me to support you in that? And they might say, well, that's 5 years out or something. Well, now we can plan. Right. Part of what we have to do here, if we want to get selfish for a second, we never encourage that, but just to be blunt, you need to know this for your own planning purposes. So burying your head in a pile of sand because you don't want to face it, that serves no one. You're going to have more pain when you do that. You might as well find out where they are. And then sometimes, we've had this happen ourselves in our firm where people think, well, I'm not sure, I don't know what I want to do. And I'm thinking about maybe making a change. And I've been doing this a long time. And then you say, well, let's keep the dialogue open and I'll support you in whatever you need to do. And then they come back, 90 days later and say, you know what? That was a bad, rough patch or something. I went through a little crisis of identity there, but I'm fine. I'm staying here and here's what I see for myself. So giving your people the space to do that too. And I know some of you may think, gosh, that's so wishy-washy. Well, no, it isn't. It's normal. It's normal on the way up to whatever you're supposed to be called to do. And if your people aren't thinking about it, then there could be some scary aha coming out there in the future. Tamera, one other thought, and we don't have time to cover it today, is just the number one thing I started with in my list, and that was this idea of the ladder up and a murkiness to the ladder up. Who's on the rung ahead of me? How long is it going to take? What do I have to do? And I think that we should do an entire discussion, HR Huddle on that, and the 12 questions maybe, which we have a blog on, that we should be asking our people about their pathway, and that we should be prepared to answer for them. There's so many questions they have that we don't answer, and they're afraid to ask. They feel like it's rude. Like, for instance, what does the revenue have to be in order to sustain a new partner? And how much does a partner make on average? And, there's just these, like a black box. The ladder up looks like this just unsolvable game. And as a result of that, I think it's hard for them to dream about it and aspire to it and get excited. And I think we need to clear that up and make it crystal clear what they need to do to get to the next level, and then what the top level of the game looks like, so that they could, if they aspire to it, they would have better information, not make up a bunch of stuff, or just not aspire to it because they have no information at all, which is commonly the case.
Right. I think that's a great idea. And I think it would help, people identify what their unique contributions are, which I think is important as people are progressing, and then we can make space for that. So I think that's a great next topic. So have a great first week of March, and we will see you next week with our next topic. If you have any ideas for these topics for HR huddles, please message us at any time in any of the social media platforms that we're on, or you can email us as well. So we are glad you're here, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks.